us. We are talking to Jeri Majewski today about how we are going to make changes that can best support our students who are deaf or hard of hearing in our studio space. We are so excited to talk about this topic because I can't think of a place that has spoken about this in recent times. So I think that it's very important as we are here starting our new dance years or getting to the middle of the first half of our dance years if we're starting new semesters in in January, considering what our curriculum looks like and how it can best support students who are deaf and hard of hearing. So we're going to wait a little bit for more people to join us here on Instagram, as well as more people to join us here on Facebook, and we will get started in about 1 minute.
Awesome.
Need that hold music.
I know. I'm supposed to be working on that. I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room with this really blank shelf that's behind me. It's totally because I just moved into a new house. And I have not unpacked these beautiful decorative things that are going to be on the back, on my shelf. So, wonderful.
For those of you just joining, we're talking with Jeri Majewski today about how we can create a studio environment that best serves our students.
All right, Bree, are we good to go?
Oh, yes. Hey, y'all. Can you see me on Insta? Can you hear me on here? Everything good? Okay.
I totally can.
Testing. All right, we're recording. We're good. Let's get started.
All right. Yep, we got to make sure we're recording because please remember that we are recording these episodes. We do have recordings of every episode that we do here for Beyond the Steps, and we email those out. So if you're listening and got to go early, please join our sign up to join us on Zoom. You don't have to join us on Zoom, but that does mean that you're going to get a recording of every show. So please take the time to do that if you want recordings. So once again, it's Friday. It's Beyond the Steps Day. We are here today with Jeri Majewski to talk about how we can create a studio environment that best serves students who are deaf or hard of hearing. This topic is one that I don't think we talk about enough. I think that it's very important that we make very intentional steps towards making dance accessible for everyone, making dance in some form, in some way accessible, because we all know that dance has blessed our lives in a number of different ways. And we want to make sure that everyone has that opportunity to have that joy that comes with dancing. So we're going to touch on a lot of topics today. I want to go ahead and get started. But before that, I do want to say, if you are watching this episode, share. We have been doing this for over a year now, and we have had so many wonderful viewers who join us on a weekly basis, people who have shared our episodes, people who go back and watch, in the hundreds and some episodes in the thousands who actually go back and rewatch the episodes. So please share and let everybody know about the content that we have here. And we would love, like I said, for you to sign up to join us on Zoom so that you can get recordings of these episodes each week. Bree, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Happy Friday. We are here with Jeri Majewski, who is the Executive Director of Feel the Beat and Teacher of the Deaf, and has brought 20 years of dance and performance experience into her work with deaf and special needs children. Jeri graduated from Pace University with a BFA in musical theater and a concentration in communication disorders and American Sign Language. She also holds a master's degree in deaf education and early childhood education from Columbia University. She's taught deaf and special education students in both the classroom and in the studio settings, giving her a wide range of perspective and experience specifically related to this topic today. Her dance training ranges from various genres of dance, including jazz, lyrical, contemporary, ballet, hip hop, as well as 12 different styles of ballroom and Latin dances. Throughout her career, Jeri has trained with renowned musical theater performers, master teachers, choreographers, and championship ballroom dance coaches. She's performed in countless theatrical productions in New York City and has traveled with the National Theater of the Deaf, performing across the country. Jeri, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I can't tell you how excited I am to be a part of this.
It's an honor. You do such incredible work. Your goal from the beginning has been to make dance a space for all, right? What we love inclusivity. We talk about it every week on the show. What are some of the things you noticed early on in your career, especially as you dove into your studies of pedagogy, that there were some gaps that needed to be filled in order to better include the deaf and special needs communities? What did you notice?
Great questions. So very particularly when I started formulating the concept and all things Feel the Beat, it really just started from myself and my co-founder working in the deaf ed and special needs setting in the classrooms. And what had, kind of started this whole like pinwheel effect, we would have, we had this what's called a Deaf Plus or a multiple needs classroom. So all of our students were all significantly deaf or hard of hearing with some kind of significant special needs. So deaf with Down syndrome, deaf and autistic, deaf with cerebral palsy, deaf blind, what have you. And our kids were, had a very, very specialized program with us, and we're in this well-maintained, self-contained environment and setting. However, several points during the day in a beautiful way, they'd be integrated into the mainstream classrooms for programs such as music, such as art, such as gym, what have you. And in those classes, it became incredibly evident that those teachers, by no fault of their own, didn't know how to educate our students. They didn't know how to adapt programming. They didn't have the actual like physical tools or resources that could truly help translate and make these programs equatable for our students. So we took it upon ourselves to go into both the art room and the music room and truly got like free range to experiment and explore with our students. Particularly, I'll give you this like one perfect example. We have one of our students who is deaf and blind and has some other, significant intellectual and developmental disabilities. We took her into, mind you, some of these students also don't benefit from use of a hearing aid or a cochlear implant. So that's another layer to it. I felt that was pretty important to this topic and story. And we brought that particular student along with the rest of our students into the music room, and we had her put her hands on a xylophone while another student, kind of bounced around and played different notes, and the two of them would alternate, one feeling, one playing, one feeling, one playing. The way they lit up and the expression on their faces and the evident joy and excitement, motivation, everything imaginable that you could see. That moment changed my life forever.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and really everything that is Feel the Beat has kind of trickled from that. The next move was bringing, like, how do we make music and movement more accessible and integrated into our classroom and integrated into our curriculum. And, like, if this is so inspiring and so meaningful and useful for these kids, what can we do that's educational based, but also brings in those supplements of music, movement, dance, and so, one thing kind of led to another, and that's where Feel the Beat kind of stemmed from. But noticing those gaps in, public education, and again, it's at no fault to those educators. It's, it's all about, furthering your toolbox, and what else you could use and bring into your classroom to meet the needs of any and every individual that comes your way. And that's the challenge that we're all in for.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
For those of you who are just joining us, we are with Jeri Majewski, and we are talking about how we can create a studio environment that best serves students who are deaf or hard of hearing. And I'm glad I readdressed the topic here, because that leads into a question that I had when we were preparing for this episode. We kept saying a very intentional differentiation, or making sure that we were using in tandem the words deaf and hard of hearing. What's the difference, and is it important to distinguish between the two?
Yeah, that's another really great question. We actually were just in another conversation earlier this week that points to that exact thought process. So generally speaking, like if I am addressing the community as a whole, or if somebody else is addressing the community as a whole, saying, individuals with a hearing loss or individuals with hearing differences or things like that is acceptable. And, there's a lot of cultural gaps and understanding in areas of respect that we try to meet at the same time. So one of those things is distinguishing, actually, there's three. There's deaf with a lowercase d, deaf with a capital D, and then hard of hearing.
Okay.
And so that kind of covers the deaf with a lowercase d is like the actual, what's the word? Like the distinct decibel level, the amount of significant hearing loss. Like if you are deaf, you have a profound, like medical hearing loss. Those who are hard of hearing typically have less of a hearing loss. There's a range. Those who are hard of hearing may also choose to use spoken language as their mode of communication. Like they don't necessarily need or rely on their or lean on their deafness or their hard of hearing nature. There's such a large span. And then deaf with a capital D also refers to someone who's both profoundly deaf with, a profound hearing loss and considers themselves culturally deaf and a part of the culture, along with using sign language as their mode of communication.
Okay. That's interesting. So yeah, that's very interesting.
I'm trying to break this out for I'm
Jeri,
writing this.
I'm about to go off on a tangent. So you were talking about culture and being a part of the culture. What does that mean? And is there and there are in a lot of equity spaces and liberation spaces, there are people that we consider to be allies, who are part of the movement, but not necessarily experiencing equity spaces, the oppression or actual, someone who is experiencing the challenges that they may be allied for. Is that a thing in the culture? Tell us about that.
In a way, that's a great way to point to it. First and foremost is, of course, those who are experiencing that, whether it's oppression, differentiation, I don't want to say medical element to it, inside of that culture and that whole nature and that world, is actually most people who are deaf, capital D, like in that culture, they don't consider themselves having lost anything. They don't consider themselves as disabled or with anything
limiting.
Exactly. Thank you. The profound element to it is that they have an entire culture, language, and grammatical system that they follow and use, and it's a whole, community inside of that. So, of course, there's those who are deaf and have those degrees of hearing loss inside of that cultural bubble. Then you have those who are family members, specifically those who have parents who are deaf or hard of hearing, and those who have children who are deaf or hard, and siblings and all that kind of stuff. There's something called a coda, which is, I think there's a movie about that most recently, which is child of deaf adult. There's different, phrases similar to that. They are most definitely embedded and naturally a part of that culture. For those who are born into a deaf family, sign language and all of that is their first language. That's their primary language. you know? So that deaf culture is really like what's at the forefront of their community. And, then comes in the hearing community
Right.
later on with, educational development and all that kind of stuff.
I never thought about that, like being born
Yeah.
into a deaf family or having deaf parents. Like your first language is probably ASL. Wow, that's interesting. I never thought about that. So do you have statistics or numbers on how many children in this country are impacted by hearing loss or other auditory challenges?
So as a whole, there are about, 10 million individuals with a degree of hearing loss. And it is said that 2 out of 10 children are born with some kind of hearing loss.
Okay.
So yeah, those are like the most simplistic numbers I.
Okay. So you said 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10. So 1 out of 5.
Children. Okay. Born with, and I know this may be the totally in-depth questions, probably something medical. Do children often grow out of, or can be, through therapies, improve their hearing capabilities, or is it something that's kind of you're born with that level of, you mentioned it before, decibel, what are the decibels? Do you lose your decibel here?
There's a different degree of decibel loss and frequency.
Okay, decibel loss.
All of that kind of stuff that, there's a range of anything from, a very, very mild hearing loss to profound and severe.
Right.
There's definitely a range. To answer the question that you first proposed, it's like ultimately no. You're born deaf. You're born deaf. What typically happens when you are born with some degree of hearing loss, the cochlea inside of your inner ear, they are all on a fully hearing individual. The cochlea is lined with hair follicles, like little hairs that like kind of follow the whole intertwined cochlea. When you have a level of hearing loss, think of it as like a few of those hair cells are gone. A few of those. So like when the more profoundly deaf you are, the less you have.
Yeah.
So you're not going to grow those back through therapy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's not coming back. However, there's significant amount of tools and devices that people find great use of. Just the general run-of-the-mill hearing aid, and there's different kinds of hearing aids that fit different needs, which some individuals have incredible success with.
Right. Yep.
In hearing aids and speech therapy and all those kinds of things. Someone with just a slight degree of hearing loss, can seem just like you and I.
Is it something that gets progressively worse or is it something like if they have success with a cochlear implant or some sort of hearing aid or device, can they live like that forever, or are there chances that it's going to progress and get worse as they get older, or reverse that and then maybe it gets better?
I would say every case, or not just every case, there's so many different types of hearing loss. It's not just from one, you can have a bone conduction hearing loss, which has nothing to do with the cochlea. It could be a sensory neural hearing loss. There could be a disconnect with, wiring and all that kind of stuff. There could be, you could have tinnitus, which is damaging from, loud noises and things like that. So like there's so much variation there that's hard to answer. Yeah. And I don't consider myself an audiologist or anything like that. But really each case is different. Cochlear implants, certainly from what everything I know about it in the personal experience and through research, some people have really incredible success with them, and it spans their lifetime. Like I actually I know people that didn't have success that needed to go back to get reimplanted. Some people start off with a cochlear implant just on one side, and then they get a bilateral cochlear implant. So like there's different ranges of all of that. But yeah, I mean, and also I just want to phrase and state that those, again, in the culturally deaf community, they don't necessarily want or seek out those amplifications, and those types of supportive devices. Like they think some of them use hearing aids, especially during like school age years, because it definitely helps with language learning and reading and writing and all of those kinds of things. But a lot of them, past those education years, they choose not to do it. It's a choice, right? The way they are,
right. Absolutely.
So there really is a range.
Yeah, we know that dance and the arts is really important for children. And, we like to talk about, how so many of these issues relate to the dance industry specifically, and how we can make improvements to create more inclusive dance spaces for everybody. And obviously the biggest segment impacted by that is children. Children start dancing and doing music at such an early age. You were sharing with us before we got started that, really diagnosing kids it's not such a concern anymore for educators. That's one thing that we can pull off their shoulders, because it's pretty standard right now for children at this point, for children to be tested, go through those auditory tests at birth, right? It's mandatory, you said, I think, right?
Screening, yeah.
Yeah, so these screenings are done at birth, and they're detecting these challenges earlier and earlier in children. But one of the things that you've done that's really cool with Feel the Beat is you've kind of experimented with creating this space that uses really cool technology to kind of help with some of these challenges. So can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do with Feel the Beat, and what technologies you're bringing in to help with all of this?
Yeah, certainly. So kind of after, like stemming from that story I told earlier with that child and the xylophone, we started kind of like the next few phases was experimenting with any kind of tactile technology that we can get our hands on. So there's like tactile transducers, which some people have seen, like you can like put on a table, and whatever surface that item is on top of, it vibrates and produces the experience of sound through that source. However, those surfaces are vibrating. So we realized early on that wasn't going to work on a larger scale. But kind of going down the rabbit hole of like, what else is in there? What else is out there? What else could we get our hands on? What could we trial? And after about a year of doing that kind of experimenting, we found something called bone conduction technology, which in essence, rather than vibrating the air, which is how you and I typically hear, is through vibrations that get sent through airwaves. The connection of a person with this bone conduction technology vibrates through your bones and sends the sound message, the experience of music, sound, anything audible, straight past pretty much like past your inner ear. It hits your mastoid bone in the back of your head, and essentially you're able to fully experience, for some fully hear, and get all elements of sound. And this isn't just like the bass, the drums, like this is 14 different instruments played in an orchestration. Like this is every instrument, every element, every high and low. There's such minimal aspects of music that gets missed through this technology. And what we ended up doing, since finding that technology, we embedded it completely underneath pretty much our flooring at our dance studio. So our entire 900 square foot beautiful hardwood dance studio flooring is completely embedded with this technology. So every spot on the dance floor that you go, you are literally feeling the beat. And And we've even extended this to create a mobile iteration of
Wow.
that exact dance floor. So we're able to bring it, we've brought
Wow.
it to schools for the deaf really across the country, but, you know, mostly throughout Colorado for now. It's just what is feasible, you know. We've brought it to music festivals. We've brought it to music venues, like really great, like small theatrical performances to large coliseums. We've, you know, I mean, really the possibilities are endless there. We're able to bring it just about anywhere and everywhere, and that's kind of where we're expanding to next, being able to provide more sound accessible environments.
What is that moment like when you see a child who would otherwise be in a dance studio without all of these resources, and that moment where they feel that difference and they can recognize the sound and just music in the way that, you know, so many of us do? What is that moment like for you to be able to witness that?
Oh my gosh. That
It's got
I'm
to be
getting like,
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's nothing like it. I'm choked up just thinking about it. I mean, it's truly magical. Like, that's the best word I can describe, because it's truly making what had been impossible possible. Like, it's
Wow.
like, here you go. You know, it's something that has not been done for these students before. Uh, Most of our students, I'll tell you, like, they step on the floor for the first time, and like they're just
Wow.
frozen in time. Like, it's not even like excitement or fear. It's like they're just like, what is this? Like, absorbing this experience for the
Yeah.
very first time. We have tons of kids that end up, they're like, okay, screw class, and they like lie on the floor.
Yeah.
They're like,
Right.
this is all I'm concerned. Like, I just want to lie on the floor and be here. And actually transitioning from like that use for specifically the deaf and hard of hearing community, that specific like vibrational nature and that particular experience transitions beautifully to working with those with developmental and intellectual disabilities, those on the spectrum, those with sensory integration issues, you know, the whole gamut. And we've really found like this technology and in use with, you know, movement and you know, creativity education classes and all those kinds of things. It provides so much like neurological benefits, sensory benefits, calming, focusing elements. It brings I mean, think of like, this is just like another element to it, but like muscle memory.
Yeah.
You know, like for most of these kids, it's like they can't unlearn what they've now experienced and what their body has felt and those sensations, and being able to teach while experiencing the floor and positioning yourself in different movements and obtaining those memory element. I mean, it's just one thing kind of compounds the other, and it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
I
That sounds totally
I
amazing.
feel like I want to see your studio though, like all over the country. I want it to, you know, branch out, because here's what I'm thinking as you're saying this, right? We kind of touched on this earlier, is there's so many studio directors and educators that do. I mean, there's so much more than a teacher. They're a counselor, they're a friend, they're a, you know, they're a second mom or a big sister or a brother in many cases, second parent. So, you know, there's so much weight that falls on them, yet there's no formal, you know, there's standard requirement for their training, for the education that goes into what they do. Often what you see with dance educators is they're doing this out of love and passion. But there's no way for them to possibly be schooled or well-versed, not in no way, but it'd be very difficult to say to somebody, you have to have your formal education in all of these areas and still be able to teach dance, right? So it's really hard, because they almost need to be equipped with this information to provide a great experience for people who are challenged in this way. Yet, you know, the reality of that is just it's not there. So how do we still provide, and I don't know that there's an answer for this right now, but how do we provide that quality education for students who have these auditory challenges, versus ones that don't?
Yeah, no, of course. Well,
You know?
first and foremost, just putting it out there, one of the programs that we have implemented over the past, I want to say 2 years, that I've been honestly been able to focus more on this since COVID, was like this adaptive and integrative teacher training.
Okay.
And
Nice. Okay.
I know, a little shout out to Jeri. She'd hate me for saying that I'd offer it for free, but I have been offering it for free because we're a nonprofit and we want to expand accessibility and, the integrative nature. And I know the nonprofit should benefit at some point, and we'll figure that out. But really, where the passion lies and where our, very much so aligned with our mission is furthering this accessible experience and inclusive environment and inclusive curriculum. And we've spent a lot of time, money, and resources on developing such a particular curriculum that isn't, and I say that and I'm like, it's not like a rigid, you follow this curriculum. It's like a curriculum of gifts and tools, you can do your jazz class, you can do your ballet class, you could do a salsa class. It doesn't matter. You have this whole world of tools in your toolbox that we're able to train you in and give exposure to. Because I will say, not, there's no two kids that come in to our studio that's the same. And we have to keep, finding different nuggets of, what's going to work for this one and what can I do for this one. And through all of that process, we continue to develop and expand this integrative approach and this, curriculum base. And so that's one thing. Just wanted to, put that
I love that, because
there.
that's something that we can talk about. We talk about all the time
Yeah.
tools outside of dance, that we should be incorporating as educators. So knowing that you have this certification program and this course that helps with this, I think that's amazing.
Yeah. That leads me to my next question, next thought. Of course, we would all love to have the amazing technology that you have in your studio. We would all love to immediately go now and have that installed, but we don't necessarily have that, and we already have these curriculums that are, traditionally targeted towards people who are not deaf and hard of hearing. What are your thoughts on having deaf students, when we do have them, incorporated into classes with students that have hearing, or should there actually be a more focused curriculum where they have their own classes where they can really experience, and we can use those tools specifically with them?
Wonderful, wonderful question. So, thinking in the word, I'm going to kind of throw this question back at you. Thinking of the most inclusive environment, would you have wanted to be in a classroom that, I'm Jewish. So if I went to a public school and they're like, oh, okay, we're going to put you in this class and we're going to kind of structure the class to make you feel more comfortable because you're Jewish, or, you have a different color skin. We're going to put you in this. That's the opposite.
You wouldn't want that. Right.
You know, it's awesome that maybe they're tailoring these classes, but ultimately, you want that integration. Right. So the best case scenario, you walk into a class at Feel the Beat, and this is why we chose to do a floor and not those sub-packs and whatever, all those wearables they're calling them. You walk into a class at Feel the Beat, you do not know who is deaf. You do not know who is hearing. You do not know who has it, unless someone's using a walker or, has some kind of physical difference. You don't have a clue.
So that's the goal, and that is amazing. And again, it's how I wish we could have everybody have that technology at their disposal. But in the meantime, we don't have all of not most studios aren't going to have that available. And so then you're looking at it, from a parent perspective too. I don't want my kid to be in a class and feel isolated because the person that's teaching it isn't equipped to teach it, or the other kids are noticing that there's a challenge here that I don't know that I'd want to put my kid through that either. So
Of course.
and I totally get where you're from a kid's perspective. The goal is absolute inclusion and just bringing everybody together. But what is the answer there? That kind of intermediary, because the reality of the situation is we have a whole lot of people who aren't certified in this particular situation. We have a lot of physical limitations to the space that we have available to us.
Yeah.
So what is it better? We often talk about, if you don't, I'm not saying it's the same thing. I'm just kind of giving the analogy of when we talk about teaching hip hop, like if you don't know the history and you're not going to study or present the history, just don't teach it or call it something else.
Yeah.
Is it better to just say, I'm not equipped to teach your child, or is it better?
Right. I think that both. I think we get students all the time from across the country. Like we'll do virtual classes with students who went to their, parents went to their local dance studio and they were honest with them. Some with a physical difference, some with intellectual developmental difference. And they're just like, I want to do what's best for your kid. And I'm going to be honest with you. And here are my resources. That's a great offering. Like there are these other accessible programs. And there's like some studios offer for the deaf and hard of hearing community, like we can provide an interpreter, which I don't. So it's not you don't need language, like word for word language to teach dance. So that's like my goal is don't in our classes, I'm like, you don't need to talk. You don't need to sign. You don't need to talk.
Right.
Like you go to like a Zumba class, for instance. They don't sit. It's all
they just do it.
Right. Follow. Right. It's follow.
Cues, Yes, there's technicality to it, and there's all those different specifics that get incorporated. But in an overall, that's why we talk about dance being like the language of the body. It blends so beautifully with sign language because it is such an expressive language and it's an expressive use of your body. Right. So anyway, with that being said, being honest and those kinds of things I think is very much so appreciated. I think studios that could have at least one teacher on board that at least has experience or even the interest to work with individuals, with a diverse range of needs, because then that interest will translate to educating themselves, learning more, finding more about this, building that toolbox that we speak of. And then, I could go on for hours about, I could give you guys some examples for sure, but really having the capability to okay, we have a student with this difference or this need or this hearing loss or whatever, this is my capacity. This is what I can do. Maybe we don't have the floor. Fine. But we do know how to implement these several classes, or we do know how to adjust the class a little bit to better meet your needs or, what have you. And
Jeri, the way that we do that is through certification or through learning or through knowledge, where we learn and get those tools so that we can make the correct changes. Right. Versus just kind of picking from the air. We don't want to spray and pray we hope that this is actually going to help, but we actually really need to be able to do that research and get that training. Yeah.
Whether it's a hard, certified stamped program or, more of a relaxed training or whatever, I think it's all very useful and valid, and you're going to grow and you're going to gain something, and most likely you start that process, it only kind of ripple
leads you
effects.
to more.
Well,
Yeah,
and I
makes
want to
you
remind everybody, like everything we talk about, it can be very overwhelming to go, okay, look at how much work there is to do. Like, I don't
Right.
even know where to start. And so then you go, I'm just going to do nothing. I'm just going to keep going,
Yeah.
doing what I know because it's comfortable and it's easy for me. And it's convenient, right? And we're all guilty of that. But I think with everything that we talk about, it's baby steps, and having this conversation is a step, and continuing to have these conversations is a step, and knowing that you have this course now, we can talk about it and educate people that this is actually out there for you to get more knowledge and some things that you can implement today. In that same spirit, I want to talk about equity and inclusion aspect of working with students who are deaf and hard of hearing, because we need to be able to ensure that our environment, no matter what level which level we're at as far as our understanding and awareness, that we have an environment that's respectful and comfortable for all of our students, right? So are there any important steps that we should take that are easy to take right now to make these students, the ones we're talking about today, are deaf or hard of hearing, they have auditory challenges, to make them feel welcomed and not alienated?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm trying to pick my best.
It's hard. It's hard.
Right? So, it's all, like you said, like there's so many different steps and you don't want to overwhelm. Like there are small things. I always say,
is it better to just go, I don't know everything there is, but I want to help you and I want to make this the best experience for you possible. Great. What can I do? Is that?
That's how we learn.
Right.
I have 3 masters and I'm every day learning. You know, like it's not like I don't claim to know it all by any means. I have a child with presenting with different behavioral or intellectual needs, and I have to go over. It's not like you need to fit the curriculum that I've made for you. Right. It's like, no. Like, what's going to work for you? Let's figure this out. Like, I'm committed to, like, my heart's in it. Like, let's figure this out together, Right. So some of the things you could do, like, kind of off the bat. Of course, making sure, like, your space is as ADA and ADA regulated and friendly as possible. Thinking, I was just in a studio the other day kind of helping, like there's a whole world of creating like what an accessible space looks like, not just like ADA, like things like I think it was a yoga studio actually. There was a like beautiful, colorful, like kind of flimsy rug right when you walked in the doorway. Beautiful. Creates the environment. I get it. And someone with a wheelchair can't run over it. Right. You know? Like things like that, like constantly putting yourself in their shoes. Okay, you're deaf, you're hard of hearing, you're walking into a space, you guys don't know sign language. Having things printed out, having signs in large, bold print. Having policies or class offerings or like your, frequently asked questions printed and answers printed out to be able, any kind of visual resource that you could provide. That's like bare minimum, simple, this, that, and the other thing. There's also, and like not wanting to overload you guys, but like we teach all of our instructors, volunteers, board members, what have you, like the top 50 to 100 signs to know. It's like so not that difficult. It like really is. Really isn't that difficult. And like it's so meaningful when someone, even if you're just like waiting in line at Starbucks, it just makes such a difference being able to get inside their world rather than them trying to.
Well, I would think it makes them feel so seen and validated.
Yeah.
Right.
They're part of it. And I think they are a part of it. We just need to be aware that we're limited. We need to do better about not being so limited. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think it's a beautiful thing and a beautiful possibility to even, like you said, those top 50 most commonly used signs to teach them in classes where there are no students that are deaf or hard of hearing.
Yeah.
Like imagine just allowing students who were already we're already teaching them how to use their bodies creatively to tell stories and how to communicate. Well, that's a further extension of that. That's just a formalized language. Like there's no reason that we have to have a student who is deaf or hard of hearing in order to do something like that, or teach our teachers like that. That's just good knowledge to have to make sure that everyone is included and everyone is welcome when they walk into our street. Because we may have a parent, not necessarily a student, but there could be a parent who's deaf or hard of hearing that we want to be able to communicate with. So I love that. Thank you so much. That's a good tip. I really love that. Well, it's time for homework. This is our weekly homework. We give everyone something to do once they leave here. So what is one step that you would like our viewers to take between now and next Friday that will help them make progress in this area?
That's a great question. I would, and this isn't something I've spoken about yet, but I think this is probably the most beneficial. I would look at your curriculum, what you're already implementing in your classes. You could look at your classes across the board if you have a very similar warm-up, for instance, or you can focus on one specific class. And I would look at that warm-up or those practices and see where you could transition that practice to be as visual as possible. And as rhythmically connected. And what I mean by that is I do a run-of-the-mill typical jazz warm-up for my jazz class, and I integrate moving my hair, putting rhythm into my body, or whatever we're doing. If we're, doing isolation,
shoulder isolations,
very, very 1, 2. I mean, I count and sign at the same time, whatever, but on the beat, on the rhythm, and then I put it into my body, and then I do the same thing again, or whatever. And that is the most simplistic way to someone with a hearing loss, or even someone on the spectrum, someone, that just needs extra support, whatever. Those kinds of tools, it slows it down, puts the muscle memory in. It has calming effects. It provides that rhythmic education and vibration, without the dance floor, that's giving you what they're not necessarily able to access through music. And that's something you could use throughout class.
Right.
It's like a small tool to go back to. And I find that, I've done workshops all over without the floor. And those kinds of elements are, really
helpful. Right. Absolutely. All right. I think you have your assignment, everyone. You have your homework moving forward. Please take those steps. In addition to those steps, we like to give you some steps as well. The STEPS initiative. How many times can Melissa say steps in one segment is what we're doing. The STEPS initiative is where Beyond the Steps was born out of. It is a free program that provides education and tools, like Jeri has been talking to us about your toolkit. It is a program that adds a number of tools to your toolkit in a number of different areas: racism, equity and inclusion, gender equity, dance, medicine and science, nutrition, psychology, you name it. Your toolkit will get expanded by leaps and bounds by taking this course. So Bree has popped that into the comment section on Facebook here. So please take advantage of that. YPAD has certifications. I think all of us have heard of YPAD and the wonderful work that they are doing. They have a number of certifications that you can use that help to make sure that your studio environment is safe and your students are protected, and that you have the training that you need to be able to do that, we have a 25% off code for YPAS certifications. It is Apollo25. Go to the website there that is in the comment section and use that code, and you will get 25% off. Jeri, how can they get in touch with you? Do you do consultations? I know you said you visit places. You were mentioning that. How can they get in touch with you?
Anything and everything. You can, of course, email me at any time at either info@feelthebeat.dance or Jari, Jari, at feelthebeat.dance, and I could put that in somewhere. I don't know which.
I'm putting it in for you.
You can put it in. Yeah, Bree is going to put it in here, and I'm going to put it in on Instagram.
Thank you. You could always visit our website at feelthebeat.dance. It's www.feelthebeat.dance. Through Instagram, through, any kind, or through Facebook, which I think you guys have, right? You could just throw in there. We do consultations. We do, like the trainings and certification programs. We do classes for both educators, students. We do master classes. We could do, a collaborative experience. We do like a student teacher training program. Really we're open to creating anything under the sun that helps further, this mission and other studios and educators that are out there with the desire and passion.
Thank you.
We'll figure it out.
Thank you. We have Patricia, one of my former parents, sad to say her child has graduated and gone on. Said thank you so much. This was so informative. Jeri, you have a fan out there on Facebook that has found this information very informative.
Yeah.
Bree, take us out for the week.
Yeah, you guys, thanks for watching. Thank you everybody for tuning in.
Bree, you're muted.
Oh, I am?
I hear you.
Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay.
Thank
Thank you all so much for tuning in.
Nope, you're good, Bree. Sorry, that was me. That was my fault.
This has been another amazing conversation. Thank you to Jeri Majewski of Feel the Beat for joining us today. And I want you, tell us one more time your website, Jeri, so they can look you up.
So it's www.feelthebeat.dance.
Okay. Feelthebeat.dance, and I'm going to pop that in here in a second too.
Cool.
For those of you that that maybe tuned in to all or part of this or just part of the conversation, share it. We want everybody to hear this information. The more we share, the more people know, and the better we can all do collectively as a community. We are going to be back next week, Friday, November 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern with Terry Rowe, who is one of the executive directors of the National Dance Coaches Association, or NDCA. And Carson Rowe might be joining her as well, who is the premier collegiate choreographer. And we're going to be talking with them next week about the challenges for collegiate competitive dancers and how we can prepare our dancers now if they want to go down that path. I think there's so many things happening in the industry right now that are are challenging to navigate, and this is no exception. There's been a lot going on with the collegiate competitive world in the last couple years, and I think it's going to be really important for parents and educators to know how we can support the kids that want to move forward in this way. So tune in. We hope to see you. As always, you can message us any questions, comments, topic ideas, people you want to hear from our guest expert panelists. We are scheduling for all of 2022 right now, so we want to hear from you. You can message us info@apolloperformance.com. And until then, we hope you can continue your journey beyond the steps. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jeri. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for everyone that joined. So exciting.
We'll share this. We'll get this to you too.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you.